Industrial Advisor, Government of India. A warm welcome to you, sir. I invite Shri Mohit Rao, Consultant, Ministry of Panchayat.
Privacy losses has been increasing in the global risk landscape, along with
Shri Mohit Rao. I invite Shri G.S. Krishnan, Consultant,
security,
Ministry of
etc.
Panchayati Raj.
Vision 2047 is very important, especially to put forward a futuristic approach. While all of us are thinking of global frameworks until 2030, I think it is important to think beyond it. India will have better infrastructure, better end-to-end early warning system, and better community resilience. We will possibly face new risks in the world of uncertainty, but we will also be prepared with new and emerging technologies and very strong youth innovation. India's leadership in G20.
And for the moderation of the session, I hand over to Mr. Vikrant Mahajan, CEO, Square India. Over to you, sir. And the time duration is 1 hour, approximately 1 hour.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair and distinguished panelists. I think in the interest of time, I quickly move forward. Setting the context, this discussion is actually a continuity of the previous session, and those who have been around here, I think they must have seen it. The previous session, we were looking at, how do we address various loss and damages. I think the COP27 has given us, the loss and damages as a big development out there, but I think this is something which we all of us have been grappling for many years. So the discussion was, how do we address loss and damages? And one of the things which came up is that how we bring development actors together in this entire discourse of risk, resilience, loss and damages, because it's essentially required to be addressed by the development which is happening. And maybe one of the way to look at is mainstreaming DRR and climate change in the sustainable development goals, or mainstreaming climate change and DRR in all the development work which is happening. So that's the perspective. I think we are somewhere midterm of the Sendai framework for DRR. It's also we are midterm for the sustainable development goals. I think it's also the time that we review and assess, what have been our progress on it, what have been the enablers, and where is it that we need to find, more creative solutions ahead as for the remaining time left. And what comes up from our recent experiences of the COVID-19, I think we cannot no more see it in isolation of that. And climate change is becoming more and more a reality as the priority. We are also seeing it emerging from the last two COP, the various developments and all those things there. So we cannot see development now completely, without taking DRR, climate change, One Health. Now I think also but the Honorable Prime Minister also have been addressing about the whole of society approach, the mission life. I think all these enabling, all of these are linked together. Perhaps we have to see them together in one lens, and that's the background for the discussion today. And today the common question, I think, which we're going to address, we have representatives from different stakeholder groups here. We have representatives from the ministry, we have representatives from the civil society, from the UN. So from each of your respective perspective, what do you see that how the mainstreaming, where we are on the mainstreaming aspect, and how it can be improved moving forward. I think this is the broader question which we will get. And again, to begin with, first of all, I request the chair, Dr. Nisha Mendirta. She's advisor and head climate change program and vice president division, DST, Government of India. Ma'am, we would like to hear your perspective first.
Thank you so much. I think it's not working. Yeah, thank you so much, Vikrant. Am I audible?
You can use this.
That will be better.
If that's better.
Yeah. A very good afternoon to all for this very special session which has been especially kept to understand the SDG realization through DRR and climate change adaptation. My panelists here, co-chair, all the friends, experts on dais, and here in the gathering, my friends, my colleagues, it's a real good opportunity for all of us to discuss in details about the climate action and disaster risk reduction aspects, what we can do and what are the way forward, considering the recent calamities which are happening and which all of us are facing, especially in India. It was really heartening to see yesterday the various sessions which were giving us an insight from various speakers representing the higher bodies, not only from Government of India, but also who are working very actively in other areas from many organizations. We heard about them, from them, about the various facets which really gave us an insight that climate action is really required, and DRR is another aspect which cannot be overlooked, and it requires a very robust kind of mechanism involving many stakeholders. Here, I think the need of the hour is first of all to understand the intensity of calamities, and as already very well captured in many events, and especially in the recent COP, where the theme was life. That was life for sustainable environment, and there I think many of us had already participated in various sessions, and the common thing which came up was we really look towards having strengthening the capacities in our country with regard to climate change action. That was the common portfolio which came up to various organizations, and there is a need to strengthen the scientific based research mechanism in climate change action. And here adaptation and mitigation again were the two aspects which were discussed in details, and technological intervention was another aspect. And the most important thing was how to create awareness, take the information to the stakeholders, and then collate the information. There was a need felt that, there is a need to go for a very intensive information system, data information system, when we are trying to look into the disaster risk reduction and also the different information system for the policy makers. The need of the hour is we should have all kind of information at a common platform, which is lacking. And then there should be a, as I said, robust mechanism to put everything together so that we can meet the Sustainable Development Goals agenda set up by UN in the year 2030. Here, I just want to tell one thing with regard to sustainable development. We talk quite a lot about it, about SDG goals. There are 17 goals, out of which climate action is one of the most important goals. But what do we think about it? We think that development really looks after the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet our own needs. Our own needs means, friends, we are talking about our natural resource, and India is one of the country which has tremendous resources available with us. But how to manage, how to conserve, so that it can be utilized for the mankind in a very holistic manner. So sustainable development calls for the concerted efforts towards building an inclusive, sustainable and resilient future for people and our planet. And here there are three core elements of sustainable development, which are economic growth, social inclusion and environmental protection. And it is really crucial for the scientific fraternity to look into the scientific solution by networking, by strengthening their goals, their activities, and bringing a proper solution for the policy makers. This is one of the things which I want to say. And the second, I would like to end only by sharing one more piece of information, because no one has spoken about gender so far. And I feel that I am advocating gender, and I could see various panelists here, and I'm very happy to see the participants here, that gender really plays a very important role when we look into the climate change impacts. Not only the impacts, the role of gender is very important in understanding the burnt of climate change at various level, at local level, at regional level. And one interesting study, only one line I would like to share, but later on, if the time permits, we can have a detailed discussion on that. I am just taking a clue from the DRR 10-point agenda, which was shared by Dr. Anil Gupta. So here there is a one point which talks about the women's leadership and greater involvement should be central to disaster risk management. So there is one point number 3 talks about women's participation. And friends, in the recent study, when we are talking about COP, UNFCCC has brought out one study which says women's well-being and gender-responsive climate policy have been emphasized in international agreements during Paris Agreement in the year 2015. And then again another norm came in the year 2016, which spoke about the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women and Gender and Climate Change Response, increase social trust and improve climate mitigation policy development and implementation. So I think in UNFCCC also, in COP also, there have been an inclusion of gender response, and we really look forward to have some kind of intervention involving women in the climate change session, and especially in the DRR section. Thank you so much, and look forward to hear the panelists. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Nisha. You mentioned about looking at the data information system, bringing all information on a common platform, and most importantly, I think looking at the gender and how we see more women leadership and more women participation in this discourse. We have been joined by the co-chair, Professor Santosh Kumar. He is joining online. Professor Santosh Kumar is head CCA-DRR and former ED and IDM. Professor Santosh Kumar, sir, if you can also share with us a bit more on, how much progress we are making in terms of utilizing the flexi funds, which is available for mainstreaming DRR and climate change in our development works. Maybe if you share a bit more on that also, and of course we always look forward to hear from your perspective, other aspects. So over to you, Professor Santosh.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Person and all the distinguished panelists, the moderators. Indeed, I'm grateful to all of you, the distinguished delegates. Coming straight away because 8 panelists are to be given time. So I'm just coming straight to the question what Vikrant has asked. It's very interesting that Government of India has these kind of arrangements, but each sector allocated certain amounts for their own development. And all the development funds are supposed to have a flexi fund that is a 30% of their total investment. So that 30% is a huge amount for the total outlay of per sector. But that 30% hardly got utilized in terms of disaster risk management. And that 30% was mentioned that it would be utilized by that. So many of the sectoral ministries tried their level best to include that and get the benefits out of that, but it never happened. Many of the flexing fund remain unutilized. So looking all those funding mechanism and how the DRR is getting as a kind of a top priority amongst the department, it remains as a kind of a wishful thinking, despite that we have a kind of a national plan. A national plan has given different responsibilities to each of the ministries. So idea is that any ministry, if they are looking for the resources for mainstreaming, they have the resources with them. So, but even then, taking that also into cognizance, if we go by that now after the 15th Finance Commission, the money is available for mitigation and also for preparedness, and there are many other things. So idea is to, if the flexi fund is not being utilized, where the things have been made mandatory, that can be capitalized by that. The second thing which I would like to mention here, this is not the money utilization, it's a kind of our own kind of a thinking of that sector, that whether my sector is exposed to how much kind of a risk and accordingly how much we wish to treat that. So if that behavioral change is not happening in the thinking, in the planning, the strategies and the program will not flow. So that idea is to, first is to comprehending that yes, my sector exposure is there, and that exposure that we have the resources comes always later. It's not the first thing. First is the idea, then the concerns, and then our quantification of risk. And if that exposure risk quantification has been done, then going by that how we are going to reduce that. So this is very important. And so mainstreaming is largely depending on that, our own thinking of the sector. Unless and until that gets transformed, mere legislation, mere policy, mere program, mere allocation of funding will not serve much of the purposes. So that's for that point which I wanted to bring the Vikrant specific question which you have raised to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think this was very helpful and always good to listen to it from your experiences. Yes, I think it's not just the policy and financial provision. It is more about the behavioral thing which need to go. And what we were discussing in the last session also is that most of this discourse about the risk resilience and the mainstreaming DRR climate change remain within the community, which we are working on. It don't go down to the local levels, especially across the development actors. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Maybe I'll move the discussion forward with Professor Anil Gupta. No, it's okay, sir. I think maybe good to set the context and you share that, how, when Professor Santosh has shared that where we are and maybe it's not going down the behavior and we have not seen maximum utilization. So I think we can share also about the initiative which NIDM is taking in terms of developing the guidance and for the awareness down the chain, and what are other such solutions you provide, through which we see the behavioral change happening and we also see more utilization of resources which are allocated for it. So over to you, Professor Anil Gupta.
I think after Dr. Nisha and Professor Santosh Kumar told, I would like to complement with 3 quick points. One is that basically we will have to work a little more on the pathways and means of operationalizing the guidelines that we have at the local level. I think we had a very good journey of developing an enabling environment. Enabling environment at national level, at state level is there. Now basically we will have to work a little more at, and then second thing is that how do we decentralize? And in fact the government of India has also now the new focus, that is like the Abda Mitra. That is one example. Now there are several such examples where we are looking at the agents beyond the government, and I think that is a very good learning and message that we have to see at all stakeholder involvement, and that is in fact both the way important, like sabka saath sabka vikas, but on the other hand in DRR we say that all inclusive DRR. So I think that's very important. So this is one. Second thing is that in fact from Professor Santosh Kumar's discussion in some forum, and basically we will also have to work at easy indicators at local level. Like if we say that what is the level of risk now, and if we do so things, and that, then so what shall be the risk then? So at least we should have some kind of indicator, some kind of mapping, that after doing this much of capacity building, after doing a risk mapping, after doing this much, maybe this is the level of risk, we brought it down. The saying is easy, doing is not that easy, but we will have to find out the ways. And the third one is basically that at ground level, at local level, still we are finding that disaster management is not yet recognized as a profession. And since it is not recognized as a profession, there's a dearth of experts with whom we can have confidence. So each and every district, if we have few people with whom we can rely, with whom we can think that if they are carrying a vulnerability assessment, if they are carrying a risk assessment, there is some good level of confidence we can have in them. So I think these 3 points, and then this has to be seen across the sectors. Yeah, so these are my points.
Sir. Thank you so much, sir. I think we really moving forward. I think you're talking about this Abda Mitra. I think we're reaching out to 100,000, maybe 200,000 Abda Mitras for a country like India. Uh, Maybe I think the target, I think we have discussed in the previous forum, at least we start aiming at a 1% of the population who is risk aware at the grassroots level, maybe around 1.5 crores. And yes, when we looked at the figures of volunteers we have as NCC, NSS, Nehru Yuva Kendra, I think volunteers across, the verticals we are sitting over here, if we put all of them together, we definitely reach that figure, but maybe at least having something basic of a level of awareness. So we move forward to our next speaker, Shri Sudeep Roy, is Associate Town and Country Planner from Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. So Sudeep, from your experience, of your work which is happening, how you're seeing the climate change and DRR is being addressed in realizing the SDG goals where you are working on and taking discussion forward. Over to you.
Thank you, Ma'am Chair, Ms. Nisha Mandirata and Moderator Sir Vikrant. Indeed, 2.5 days into this conference, I was expecting that at least a few of my department heads would be probably nominated here to check across whether are all sectoral programs or everything that fits into urban planning program is actually a vast area which covers everything from solid waste to water management to building bylaws to urban design. So there is a lot that has to be, imbibed into this entire urban realm to address. So currently, as of a practice, what we see is wherever there is a master plan or there is a sectoral plan being done, there is a component which says that the disaster risk mitigation has to be inbuilt into the plan. And who is to certify that plan? Only the State Disaster Management Authority, SDMA, will authorize. They will check the plan and they will certify whether it goes alongside. So that level of compliance is only it's a statutory compliance which can be done, which can be just written document and which can be, expressed in a few words or maybe a few pages or maybe a few sectoral reports. But the issue is that if that is made into the plan, whether that gets executed or whether that enables the local people to handle or to respond to that emergency is something which has never been measured.
Yeah.
What happens is when a disaster happens, the NIDM, the NDMA, they start assessing. What happens is the program which was implemented from the urban sector, how successful was that? There has been no yardstick, no benchmarks to check on that. So what happens is we keep on learning, we keep on adding without knowing whether the efficacy has improved or it has not improved. So currently, I'll just, while walking down all the sectoral issues that we address, SDG 11 is absolutely pertinent to urban planning. SDG 11 is the sustainable cities and communities. So as far as urban planning is concerned, cities, as soon as we say the city is sustainable, the community has been made able to handle the disaster, we say it is SDG compliant, SDG 11 compliant. So MOHUA is assured that we have done it. But look at sectors, the SDG 7, clean energy. Unless we build the energy factor into the urban planning programs, the energy consumption of the cities will keep on skyrocketing. So even though we have currently, published and circulated a small addendum to the bylaws as well as the plan making mechanism guidelines, it's called the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. One small addendum. So it addresses one small component. We don't know where from the energy is to be mobilized, but at least the cars which were running on the fossil fuels has to now migrate to, and the abilities have been made into the bylaws as well. To start with a target of 2025 or 30, expecting that 20% of all vehicles would have probably migrated into the electric vehicles. The enabling infrastructure, the amount of chargers and the amount of private as well as captive chargers, they have been already recommended. But how much is the compliance at the state level? How many units have been set up? The reverse mechanism of reporting, how many have done according to the recommendation, is where we do not have a feedback mechanism. So one is that. Then gender equality, just as you said, sir, gender equality. The model building bylaws, most of the places, wherever we write, it's like a social fabric. there has been no recommendation for men and women separately. Identifiable that the sanitation requirements of women are much different than the sanitation requirement of men. So they were drafted in. So they were drafted in and recommended for all the sectors, starting from education to public, semi-public, to official, to assembly buildings. So one sector. Then there was no childcare facility recommended in the bylaws. Although we know that there is a workforce, given the entire workforce, at least 20% of the workforce comes from the fair gender. So there was again a drafted requirement wherein we had to say that the childcare facility is to be recommended wherever there's a concentration of workforce of women. Now we cannot generalize in terms of how much of official space goes into it, but at least there is a recommendation that wherever there is a central business district, with the amount of floor space recommended to house those official figures, that a certain percentage has to be given to the childcare facility. Now, yesterday when we were talking about, I represented one of the sessions where I asked a question that we are asking the states to prepare a river sensitive master plan, because water is a great sector which imbibes a lot of sustainability as well as disaster risk reduction. So how do they address? One is river, the other sectors are, the other smaller units are water bodies and ravines and all of that. So what we need is a synergizing of these issues where we need to ask, given the state of the 74th amendment, the states have been empowered to implement the plans. The center has only the advisory role along with the provision of funds, the central funds. See, the mechanism that has been brought in is, we amend the rules, we send an advisory, along with that we create schemes wherein we say that this is a reform which has been recommended by such and such document. Either it's a planning guideline or it is an implementation guideline, and based on that reform there is an incentive which you will earn, which again has to be pooled back into the same sector. So that is where we said that the reforms are now, they are tied with the reforms implementation and reforms performance. So that we did. Recently we launched a sub-scheme in which we said that the central reform from the Department of Expenditure will be given to the states to create a sponge city. The sponge city concept is pretty new, imbibing and absorbing water from the surplus water which happens to affect the city. So we drafted that, we created the city, we created the mechanism for the states to learn. Now what is the rollout in 2023-24 will be that there has to be multiple stakeholder meetings where we will train, the capacity building will also happen, and then we will see how the sector goes on. So there are many sectors, but I would like to, to be brief and to say that we are doing a lot of it, but we would also like to have a lot of feedback, and of course from all the line ministries where we connect with mostly all of the ministries and stakeholder consultations, and we need feedbacks to further progress. So thank you for this opportunity, sir, and I would like to hear from the rest.
Sure,
Thanks.
sir. I think thank you so much, Sudeep ji, and I think I'll just take the discussion forward with Shri Mohit Rao now from Ministry of Panchayati Raj. Maybe we also see here from the rural perspective also what have been shared by Sudeep. So how do you see it with Ministry of Panchayati Raj and maybe at a Gram Panchayat development plan level, some of the mainstream aspects?
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. Very good evening to everyone. My name is Mohit Rao. I'm a consultant at the Ministry of Panchayati Raj. I accompany Krishnan sir, who is also working with us. So essentially, I'd like to just touch upon a few things. First being that there is a lot of work. The Panchayati Raj, the institutions, the PRIs, are such a mechanism which basically are seats of local governance. We have over 250,000 gram panchayats. So they offer such a platform to address or decentralize disaster, climate change, but they have to be leveraged very effectively. So currently the Gram Panchayats prepare their plans. So these plans from this year would be thematic plans, So the ministry has created, so the ministry has aligned SDG goals into themes, and these themes include, say, clean energy, water sufficient villages, which cover most of the SDG themes. So this could be, so in the plan itself, we can have disaster management, local disaster management plans. So the ministry has also launched a disaster management plan, which gives a framework for mainstreaming disaster at the Gram Panchayat level. Apart from that, I would also like to bring to your attention that the panchayats are making a lot of headway in clean energy. Since we cannot see things in isolation, I think clean energy, there have been so many interventions from the panchayat itself, where the Gram Panchayat, the Sarpanch has taken the lead, and then he has used Gram Sabhas as a tool to bring consensus among the rural citizens and create an example of, say, intervention. Let us say that I would like to give an example. In Palli, recently during the National Panchayati Raj Day, Honorable Prime Minister had announced that the Palli Gram Panchayat would be working towards becoming carbon neutral. So at this point, the Palli Gram Panchayat has already in final stages of preparing its local climate action plan. So with involvement from the ministry, from the J&K, PR and RD department, from Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. So it was a collaborative effort. So similarly, a local climate action plan could be expanded with inclusion of the disaster management plan to make it more comprehensive. Nisha ma'am also touched upon addressing challenges through technology. So we have RUTAX, the Rural Technology Action Group, which could be one of the institutions which could offer such interventions at the rural in the rural landscape, which are these RUTACs are essentially housed in the IITs. Apart from that, there is one more angle which I would like to bring attention of our speakers here. Mental health during disaster management, disasters could also be one of the aspects which we could look into. The Office of PSA, the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office, has been working on an initiative called Manas Mitra, which is basically through, I think it's teleconferencing kind of a mechanism, which helps in in addressing stress-related issues for women, etc. So that could be one of the another aspect for our discussion. I'd like to.
Thank you, Mohit.
Yeah, I'd like to hand over to Krishnan sir.
Yes, Krishnan ji, maybe you can also add now. While this planning is happening, what Mohit has shared, also there's separate plan for disaster. I think maybe it can more climate change one. So, what do you see the role of other actors in helping you achieve their plan? Their NGOs, as their corporate, private sector. So maybe you can little bit delve on that as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, and respected chairperson, and my fellow panel members. At the outset, let me thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. As already Mr. Mohit Rao has introduced, I am from the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, and all of you will agree that India consists of almost a large proportion of its population in the rural areas. And the large proportion of the government budget is spent towards rural development. And panchayats are the agencies which have to oversee the rural development. As already told by Mr. Mohit, there are more than 2.6 lakhs rural bodies which are called panchayats in India, and more than 35 lakh elected representatives who are manning these panchayats. But unfortunately, the actual control of finances by the panchayats in the expenditures of the government is just 5 to 6%. So there is a conflict that they are the people who are directly in touch with the constituents, the rural citizens, and they are responsible and accountable to them. At the same time, they don't have the complete power over the various development programs and schemes that are being executed towards their rural development. So Ministry of Panchayati Raj is trying to create some sort of a bridge between these two conditions, that the panchayats, who are basically responsible for the rural development, should be able to work seamlessly with various other departments, and also try to see that the development schemes that are getting implemented at the rural level create the outcomes and outputs which are desirable. And Ministry of Panchayati Raj initially started with emphasizing on preparation of plans. Earlier, the Gram Panchayats were doing some sort of a work, but they were more of ad hoc type of activities. So in 2015, when the 14 Finance Commission grants were increased to a very large extent, it was also emphasized that they have to prepare the Gram Panchayat development plans, which will provide a base for the complete, what we call it a holistic development of the Gram Panchayats. Now, over a period of time, particularly when we talk about the issue of disaster reduction and climate action, just 2 years back, Ministry of Panchayati Raj prepared the disaster management plan for the panchayats, which basically provided a framework as to how the panchayats can prepare the village disaster plans, management plans, and then use it for their improvements at the local levels, and also integrate it with their development plans. Last year onwards, now we are emphasizing on these SDGs. As we all know that we are all committed to the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals. And Sustainable Development Goals, as our Secretary also was emphasized, earlier the information was available at the maximum at the district level. The rural level, panchayats level, etc., the information about SDG performance were not available. So Ministry of Panchayat Raj has started a campaign for localization of the SDGs at the village level and the Gram Panchayats level. And we have prepared a document on that, and we have released it also, available in our website, where we are trying to compress the 17 SDG goals in terms of themes which are to be taken up by the panchayats. We have identified 9 such themes which cover the entire SDG 17 goals. So some of the themes are like clean village, water sufficient village, infrastructure sufficient village, governance, good governance village, and so on. So they cover almost various type of SDGs, and indirectly they also cover the requirements for disaster reduction and climate increasing. So presently we are involved in a campaign called People's Plan Campaign, where the panchayats are handheld to develop a plan, Gram Panchayat Development Plan, which will integrate the requirement of SDGs in terms of what we call as local indicating factors, LIFs. So these LIFs will identify, and they are correlated to the various themes and SDGs. And the panchayats will prepare a sort of a holistic plan, which will not only consider the funds available with them, but also the various other line departments, development schemes, the state government schemes, and the various other organizations which are supporting them, like international organizations, funding organizations, NGOs, SDGs and all that, and prepare sort of a holistic plan. And this holistic plan will also have to be now integrated with the disaster plan, which we have earlier emphasized on, and that exercise is going on. And simultaneously, as Mr. Mohit also explained, we are trying to create technological base for it. So just in the last 2 years, we have integrated our website, a portal called eGram Swaraj, which was earlier basically was used mainly for having accounting system and planning system. Now we have integrated into a total portal called E-Gram Swaraj, where all the plans of all the panchayats will be made available and uploaded in an integrated fashion. So if anybody wants to know at the rural level, what are the various requirements of that panchayats and what type of outcomes they are expecting.
Thank you so much.
What type of plans they are planning. All these will be available as a integrated scheme that we are planning.
Great. Thank you so much. I think excellent work being done by the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, I think with all the planning, including the disaster management and climate aspects, they're taking it up. Discuss about the potential role of other actors also. I take that discussion forward now with Dr. Rajan K. Panda. He chairs the CCC network in Odisha and works with a lot of grassroots level actors. So Rajan, you having heard both the Ministry of Panchayati Raj as well as Ministry of Urban Affairs now here. So how do you see the network like yours, can work with in this planning framework and helping them and enabling the DRR climate mainstreaming in the plans as well as the coordination for the work? So over to you, Ranjit.
Thanks Vikrant, and thanks respected panelists and others. I think a lot of good works are being done. There is one thing that we basically in our network, what we prioritize is India is basically signatory to a lot of conventions, including the COP decisions, and there are these new emerging threats like you see what Sudeep Roy said on sponge cities, for example. So we had recommended for sponge cities almost 10 years back to the and green smart cities. So that is one kind of issue that you have to work out. You have to basically integrate the ecosystem in all your SDG goals. So there is no escape from the ecosystems. And the latest COP, I think this 30-30 principle that they are recommending now, that you have to have your water and land, forest areas, you have to preserve them, and that should be implemented starting from the grassroots, be it rural areas, be it urban areas. One thing that we see and what we have observed during our work is the urban citizens have become basically customers. But the rural citizens, we feel that all the responsibility of conservation should vest on the rural people. They should conserve all our water resources, all our forest resources, but the cities can actually just pay some money and get away with all their energy consumptions, all their emissions and all, and they would not nurture a forest. So they would not actually nurture a forest in cities, but they can go for picnic. They can go for, all their, there are also now studies available for how much, city dwellers are paying for visiting natural spots. We ourselves did a study during COVID, how much, the youth, they actually went out to natural areas to just vent out, what happened during their lockdown periods. So I think we have to somehow see a matching point somewhere. And, yesterday also I was emphasizing how the cities and rural areas should work together. So cities are providing a different kind of service, as rural areas are providing a different kind of service. So I think, but then ecosystem is providing service to everybody. So we are nowhere if the ecosystems are lost. The rate in which we are losing our wetlands in cities, for example, the rate in which we are losing our forest, natural forest, for example, in even rural areas, those have to be actually factored in all these kind of rural plans that we are talking. I think now this is the right time because states are also developing the state level indicators for SDG.
Maybe you can just also say 1 or 2 points how a network like yours can help in that.
Yeah, basically we can bring in that expertise, that experience, and basically help what Sir was saying. The panchayats are responsible for many things, but they are not equipped with many things at the moment. And same happens to the cities because they have a lot of consultants helping them. But I think so far our experience shows that it's only mostly on the superficial things, on the grey infrastructure. I think what we now need, And what we can work together is actually to go into the ecosystems-based approach planning and implementation and integrating that into SDG. I think people like us can actually help out in that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ranjan. Yes, ma'am, please.
I think this mic is not working. What you said and what previous speakers said, I think all of us are converging in one way that these kind of solutions are required. Vulnerability you were saying, so I just want to inform that pan-Indian level vulnerability exercise has already been conducted by Department of Science and Technology under our mission. We are handling 2 missions, climate change missions, NMC and NMSKCC, which have been chartered by Prime Minister Council. So I think this is the best platform to give this information, that as you are talking about indicators, and you also mentioned about many areas which has already been identified by rural department at Panchayati level. So 10 indicators we have identified for all the states, and we have got our state sales friends. They are also here from many states of our country. We have established climate change centers, dedicated centers, with the support from DST. So I take it as an opportunity that all of us can at least join hands. And now we are moving next step. Till now we have done vulnerability at the district level for 28 states of our country. And now we are moving towards assessment of risk at the panchayat level. So we are very open, and we would like that this particular session will lead us to another pathway for DRR, and with our state partners who will be very willing to join us here. So
Yeah,
that is one thing.
Yes.
And similar solutions we can hear from all of you. May not be now, it is possible because of paucity of time, but maybe later on all of us can, because we are converging to a common point.
Definitely.
5 minutes each we can take.
Yeah, I think that's where
We can leave some time for discussion also.
Yes. So
Yeah.
quickly, I think I'll move to Shri Varun Singh Punia. He is Deputy Industrial Advisor. Having heard the rural and the urban side from the government, I think. So let's see from the industrial side, Varun, what do you advise you have to offer us as a Deputy Industrial Advisor?
Thank you, Vikrantji. From the industry point of view, I belong to the Department of Chemical and Petrochemicals, and which is a mother of all the industry. We are the raw material provider for all the industry. And as you see in our nation, the population, consumption and demand are increasing. But what happened with the resources? Resources are limited, and whatever we do, always left with a limited empowerment of the society with the limited resources. So the resource efficiency and the circular economy is the requirement in our country. So the department is working on the 3 fronts to address these problems. First, we are trying to develop the circular economy with the help of the Niti Aayog and other departments which are involved in with the industries. So all the industry which is involved in the waste generation with respect to any kind of material resource management is required. We are developing the circular economy with respect to these aspects. And for that purpose, we need to understand, we need to link disaster management as well as the risk, and their risk mitigation should be mapped in the circular economy so that the overall sphere of the industry sustainability can be covered. So the stakeholders, scientific research-based projects, and that robust data management system should be developed for the industry, all kind of the industry, including chemical industry, because the chemical industry is the main feedstock industry for the other industry. So the green chemistry and the circular economy system is very essential for the sustainable development goal to achieve. And we need to focus on the prevention, assurance and sustainability principle. PS system is essential for every policy we develop in the government of India, and that need to be aligned with our objective for the sustainable development. Now, there is many points, but we need to establish the 5R system, that is redesign, reproduction, recovery, recycle and reuse, because our resources are limited and we are consuming very fast because we have the growing economy and our consumption is growing fast with respect to many other countries. So our resource efficiency should be must, and we need to establish the water, energy and food balance system so that their resources we need to be monetizing that aspect. So time is very limited, but there is two aspects as well. The department is also preparing the disaster management plan for the sector, chemical and petrochemical sector, and we are trying to align our policy with respect to disaster risk and mitigation purposes. There is several convention which is the department is monitoring with respect to chemicals, Stockholm Convention, Rotterdam Convention, in order to protect the society from the hazardous chemical impact. And department is also reviewing the management, the chemical management system, which is essential for the development of the society in a truly sustainable way, because the chemical has an inherent property of the hazardous in nature. So that hazardous property is very requirement of, and the EPR, extended producer responsibility, and the single-use plastic ban, like other measures, is the government of India is taking. So we need to focus on PAS principles to align our policy with the disaster risk.
Thank you so much, Mr. Punya. And I think the circular economy and the resource optimization is the important thing. We started this session, with 1 hour window. I think initial planning was 1:15, but we came back to 1 hour, and we still have 15 more minutes and 2 more speakers we want to hear. Very important one. So next, I request Mariah, you, especially coming from your experiences, not only from India you're working around, but also from international different contexts. So how do you see the whole discussion now, and what's your advice to help enable this mainstreaming DRR climate action in the entire planning which is happening? Over to you, Mariah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for bearing with us until 5 in the afternoon. So I'm working with UNICEF in the area of water sanitation, climate and environment, and UNICEF works across 190 countries worldwide. UNICEF has committed to make all its WASH programs climate resilient. That's a huge commitment. In some countries it means we go into solar pumping, but in other countries like India it means that we try and make our technical assistance to government programs more aligned to the concepts and principles of climate resilience. Now, how would that work in India, and why specifically is it so important to do it in India? Now, in India, we know that that around 24 million children every year are impacted by floods, cyclones, heat waves, and other emergencies. And this leads to a huge economic loss. 66 billion in the year of 2019 was lost due to disasters, extreme weather events due to climate change. That's a huge amount. So imagine the amount that India invests every year in its development, and then that amount that gets lost. So adding climate change on top of already existing disasters can further exacerbate such loss, not just monetary loss, but also the impact of everyday life. People get affected in different ways, especially the women we already mentioned, but also children and youth, which I haven't heard much about yet today. So I want to bring in children and youth as well, because they have a very important role. I think more than 50-60% of India's population is below 26 years. So really we have to think of them as this generation that will bring the solutions. They are the last generation that relies on fossil fuels, for example. Now in India, we also have huge flagship programs where the government invests in water and in sanitation. We've seen Swachh Bharat mission, 600 million in just a span of a few years, having access to a household toilet, and now government is moving forward in ensuring that solid and liquid waste is managed properly. We also have the Jal Jeevan mission, whereby 2024, all households, 1.2 billion households in India, everyone will have access to piped water supply that is safe, available at all times in the premises. So those are huge, huge investments and commitments. Now we want to ensure that those investments are not lost. Right? We have seen in the past, we have conducted PDNAs, post-disaster needs assessments in Kerala and Orissa, and more recently in 9 states. Just this afternoon I did a training on how to conduct a PDNA. So it's linked to our COP commitment on damages and losses and measuring what are the damage and losses in our development sector if these are not resilient. So it's important that we bring together different departments. The departments responsible for disaster management, the departments responsible for investments in the development sector, like Ministry of Jal Shakti, but also MOA sitting here on the table, Ministry of Panchayati Raj. I think it's really important that we merge these different, not merge, but we bring these together and we have the same understanding of how do we actually invest in resilient development. What does it actually mean? Now, for example, in WASH, currently there's an initiative between NDMA and MOGS to finalize a disaster management plan. I think it will be launched very soon. And ideally, such a plan should be followed up by a joint program where we identify what are the most vulnerable districts, what are the key priorities, and how do we implement the resilient WASH programs. So how do we take it forward? We invest a lot in plans, programs, guidelines, but how do we actually implement it on the ground? Is that capacity there? UNICEF, in partnership with the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, did an assessment of the capacity, the training needs assessment of the Panchayati Raj. And we saw that at the PRI level, trainings on WASH were hardly given or not given, or capacities were not there. Similarly on climate change, similarly on disaster. So we know the capacities are missing. So that's one step. So can we have talked about all these different plans, can we look at the evidence? So we have the evidence, vulnerability, even at the panchayat level. What specific development investments are most at risk? Where are they most at risk? How would they be affected? And then plan for them accordingly. Assign the budget for that. I think we know there is a budget, it's just not utilized. And then ensure that capacities are built for those that have to implement these plans. But then also we need to monitor if this investment was the right one. And we know globally, investing in resilient infrastructure in low and middle income countries gives you a $4 benefit for every $1 that you invest. Now, if you're going to construct a toilet, which is a standard design that we promote across the country for 12,000 rupees, can we identify where we should actually invest a little bit more, increase the amount, change the design, but ensure that that investment is not lost? So I think that is the thinking, but that comes with evidence, it comes with budget allocation, it comes with planning, it comes with capacity, and then also the monitoring. Was our investment the right one? If not, let's go back to the drawing board and let's again think of what is it that we need to do.
Thank you so much, Marai.
Thank you so much.
I think thank you, Marai, for your advice on what needs to be done in bringing everything together and the actions. So, Dr. Sudeshna, she's the program policy officer at Resilient Food System World Food Program. So, Dr. Sudeshna, what's your advice? Very briefly, please.
Had a presentation, but I guess that's not happening. Thank God. So basically, food security, I look at SDG Goal 2 and SDG Goal 13. So how is India doing on SDG Goal 2? Not very well. We're literally in the red. We might be able to achieve our SDG 2 goal, zero hunger, by 2030, but are we going to sustain that? No. Why? Because there are the 3 C's, plus that is COVID, climate change, and there's conflict and increased inequities. So it becomes extremely important that climate change, you start looking at adaptation and mitigation into your SDG realization. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to see how WFP can work towards looking at projects of that nature. So adaptation plus mitigation. We do work in disaster risk reduction, but not as much, and we do not work in loss and damage. That is, after disasters happen, even the anticipatory action we're not working on. So what WFP is trying to do is, we are building programs where we're creating localized plans for the people to be able to use. But when I say localized plans, it means that it needs input from the people. So for example, we have a project which is looking at climate services. So we have a lot of climate data. But what happens is the users don't need that data in that form. So we're actually having people give their inputs, give their feedback before seasons happen, and then that climate data, that forecast is given. So once you modify that data, that is being able to be used. So that's the kind of work we're doing. Secondly, for example, we've been talking about technology being used. So one angle of technology that we have used is we've developed an app for fisheries. So when fishermen go and need climate risk information, they get that. They not only get that, they also use their indigenous knowledge, which we often miss out on, in planning routes. So what does that lead to? Better sustainable catch, less damage of lives and assets, no ghost fishing gear that is left behind. So these look at, so while we're trying to do, mainstream SDG 13 to help us get to SDG 2, what we realized is that we're also looking at the, co-benefits that we get to the other SDGs. So we're using a method to achieve the outcome of SDG 2, but we realize that there are going to be co-benefits. So we're talking about adaptation, but again, we realize that there are going to be co-benefits for mitigation.
Thank you so much, Anashna, for letting us know that, a lot to be done on the food. I think we're really going out of time also. So I'm opening up the floor for a few questions from all the audience here. Please, yes sir.
Just I'd like to share 1 or 2 points.
Say it please briefly.
Very briefly. Odisha has amended the Panchayat Raj Acts, PRA Acts, both the Gram Panchayat Act as well as the Panchayat Samiti Act, for preparation of disaster management plans at the community level, Panchayat level and block level, Panchayat Samiti level. And Odisha also taking up 10,000 villages for preparation of community-based disaster management plans, where they will be assessing community level risk. That's into the GPDP also. Sure. And also we'll be training 40, referring to your opening remarks, we'll be training 40,000 volunteers on search and rescue of the disaster-prone areas, over and above the Abda Mitra who have 4,000.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else have another question or any comment to share? Okay. No. So I think with this, probably we will be coming towards the end of the session. And
Sir, can I just...
yeah, please.
Actually, I just wanted to share with you, because earlier one of the professors said that rural and urban are doing totally different things, and rural is producing and urban is consuming, something like that. There is a provision in the Constitution, in the 73rd Amendment, for district planning committees. And the district planning committees are supposed to combine the rural plans and the urban plans. Some states it is working very well, whereas some states they are not working well. So there is a need to bring up the district planning committees to a betterment, and they can be used for the preparing a holistic plan. And the second point, sir, about the gender. Ministry of Panchayat Raj is now insisting that the Gram Sabhas should be compulsorily preceded by the Mahila Sabhas and Bal Sabhas, so that the gender things are taken up to the Gram Sabhas, so the plans can be made in the gender enabled measure. So these 2 points I want to share.
So I think for me to conclude, it's very challenging, but I'll say a few keywords. I think one is just said the convergence. There need to be convergence across the departments, across the line ministries, across the actors, stakeholders, taking everybody together. And there need to be capacity building. And also I think about the chair, the beginning side, looking at gender and other social aspects of it all. So with these, some of the keywords, I'll summarize it and I give opportunity to the chair, for her final remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vikrant, for conducting it in a superb manner and also timely manner. And I must also compliment all the panelists to stick to the timing, and also everyone gave the aspect or the flavor of whatever they are doing in their own ministry and also departments. And I must say here that as we are talking about going towards SDGs in a very integrated manner, and here one of the common thing which all of us agree is the resource and the action, whatever we are doing. There are limited resources, not only natural resources, but other financial resources as well. And we have to end manpower. I mean, both the thing, when we talk about the resources in terms of our country, I mean, there are really limited, very meager resources we have. But we are full of the, like, I will say, jazba. Jazba, you understand? The feeling that we have to go.
Passion,
Yeah, passion, that we need to move forward with the available thing. So one good common point which has emerged from this session is, there are various programs under Government of India, which starting from the chemical, which is you said mother. So who is the father? So that is a question I'm leaving right now for the panel.
Gender inclusive.
So I think you started with that, and also from like Niti Aayog also you mentioned many things, Panchayati Raj and Ministry of like Urban Affairs, which is the biggest body, I will say. When we are talking about DRR, we need to go for a kind of a resilient infrastructure. And there the building codes, building plan, you mentioned about many things. And we fully endorse that we need to go for green buildings, net zero consumption. And now government is taking that in a very, very active manner, and they are promoting by bringing many laws, bylaws. So that is also another thing, but how to take it forward at the local level, where our Panchayati Raj Ministry, Rural Development, they spoke very nicely, we were not aware of it, about picking up of 7 or 8 themes from SDGs, 9 themes, which are very well picked up, considering the local basic amenities to be provided to the people at the local level. And then you have picked up from SDGs, and then you are integrating with the local plan, and also giving chance to the gender, and we will call it most vulnerable community. So you're giving chance to them to lead, to understand, so that better planning can be undertaken. So that is what our government wants, that we should put in all our resources. And UNICEF is doing wonderful work in WASH, and I think you mentioned about 190 countries. So we would like to know where is the position of India in that. Later on, that how much spread has been taken up under WASH, and we would also like to join hands in that. And especially to you, where you mentioned about co-benefit. We need to link up all our action activities together. So overall, it was a a wonderful session in which many ideas came up. And now, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we need to put it together. So that, as I mentioned about vulnerability, you also spoke about the same thing in a different way. You also spoke about the same vulnerable section, and even the sustainable development and urban smart city concept is coming up now. So many things are there which we can take on board, and especially Dr. Anil, he gave us a very good insight about 3-step agenda. So with regard to capacity building, we are there, DST is there, and many more organizations are there. And that is again a common factor which all of us agreed. There is a need to build the capacities, yes. S&T capacities. So overall, well-conducted session, and many ideas came up. Now let us bring out the recommendations and start working on that. And I'm very happy that gender issue was coined by me here, and I would be very happy, Dr. Anil, if we take it up in our next meeting or whenever there is something, in a very active manner, and especially I got endorsement from everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Chair.
much.
So with this, thank you, Chair, thank you all the panelists. And yes, Professor
Dr.
Santosh, you there? Your final comments as a co-chair?
Yeah.
I think he's probably
No,
not.
he's not there, sir.
Okay. Right. So I think it's my moment to thank the chair and all the distinguished panelists, everybody over here. This is only a milestone in our discussion. A process is going on, and we always stay connected for the next steps. So I hand it back to the
Thank you.
MC.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And as our chair very well said, is bringing together. The whole aim of the summit is bringing all the experts together on one platform, so that in future it is easier for everyone to work together. And all thanks to NIDM for putting this together. And now I would request Dr. Anil Rai, Director Sikkim SDMA, to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude. Ms. Abha Tiwari from UNDP to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude on behalf of the organizers to our chair.
Definitely.
a wonderfully chaired session by you. Thank you very much indeed. You also present to our moderator, Mr. Vikrant Mahajan, CEO Sphere India. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Archana Sarkar, scientist, NIH Roorkee. To Shri Sudeep Roy. And to Shri Varun Singh Punya. Thank you very much indeed. I invite Dr. Soumya Bhatt, Advisor GIZ, to present to Shri Mohit Rao, Consultant Ministry of Panchayati Raj. And to Shri G.S. Krishnan, Consultant Ministry of Panchayati Raj. Thank you very much indeed. I invite Dr. Chetna Joshi, Consultant UNDP, to present to Dr. Sudeshna Sen. To Ms. Mauri. Thank you very much indeed. And once again, before we close the session, a group photograph. Once again, requesting Professor Gupta, Dr. Archana Sarkar, Dr. Soumya Bhatt, Dr. Chetna, Abha Tiwari ji, to kindly join the panel for a group photograph. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we close the proceedings of this session and also of Day 2 of Re-Summit 2047. Tomorrow we begin the proceedings at sharp 9:30, requesting everybody to be present before 9:30 and be seated at least 10 minutes before that. Have a safe drive home, good evening and namaskar. Looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow in time. Thank you.
Morning.